I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk.
What is going on? We are back, ADP listeners. Dan and Trevor here to talk about week 3, man. What honestly, like a lot of the news from week 3, in a weird way, they didn't even talk about the field. Like everyone's talking about this Kelsey and T Swift thing. You just
Oh my
away
goodness!
from it.
You know, T Swift came to Arrowhead in the summertime, and it was all over everybody's feeds and social media, and it was just I was over it, and now we got to deal with it all again as she comes back to Arrowhead to watch Travis Kelsey. Yeah, it's living in Kansas City, I feel like we get it a little bit more because it's all over every social media, whatever. But I'm over it. I am over it for sure. Let them be them. Whatever. I'm also not a Swiftie, so I'm just like, it's cool. You guys be you.
I think the craziest part about it is like there was a team that scored 70 points last week. The Dolphins scored 70 points and had a chance to set the NFL record for points. And Taylor Swift being at a Chiefs game is still the number one story in the NFL.
Yep.
It just obviously speaks to her volume. But, like, I guarantee you if McDaniel decides to kick that field goal, Taylor Swift is still the number one story in the NFL. It's
for sure.
It's so wild.
Man, the Dolphins are absolutely just incredible right now with their offense. It's a fantasy just
juggernaut.
Rainbow. Like, you love everything you get out of it. There's a whole bunch of guys that you can use. Love what I'm seeing in Miami right now. And I think it's going to continue to happen so long as they all stay healthy over there.
Well, I think the most wild part,
freak, man.
Most wild part about that too is they didn't even have Jalen Waddle, who was in the concussion protocol. Like, they were just able to ball out like both. And then I don't know if you saw this too, but Devon Achane.
Not Achane.
Came out about
anymore,
the pronunciation.
Yeah.
So the debate is like, over. It's Achane.
I scored a couple of touchdowns. I tell you how you pronounce my name.
Yeah. He's like, I've earned it. I've earned it now. When I put up four tuds in a game, that's it.
Dude went off 50 plus fantasy points, just absolutely ridiculous. And obviously that's not going to be sustainable for Achane, but I do think this is just like an appetizer for what we can get out of this guy. If anything happens to Raheem Mostert, who also looks incredibly good. Like,
looked great.
I won 0 DFS tournaments this week because I had 0 Mostert, and every contest I was in, he was 30% owned. So, like, literally, if you didn't have him, you weren't in the top 20%, and
you're done.
Like, that's the way the cookie crumbled this week.
Right.
He looks great, but we do know he definitely falls off towards the end of the year. He's older now. I think he's like 28, 29. He's always struggled completing the entire season. So if Achane gets a chance to take over this backfield and be the number one, I think he clearly solidified the number 2 spot over Ahmed, even if Ahmed comes back, or Ahmed, or whatever it is, even if he comes back healthy. So, or Jeff Wilson, who's still on the IR. Yeah, absolutely. Just a lot of fantasy goodness there in Miami.
Mostert is 31.
Wow.
The curve.
Look at me. I thought he was a young spry, 29. He's 31. Ooh, he runs like he's 27 sometimes.
No kidding.
He's still got plenty of speed.
Olympic track runner, man.
Plenty of speed. Yeah, week 3 was I think that we are starting to learn some things through 3 weeks, right? Like, we didn't need a 70-point outing to know the Dolphins' offense was really good, or that the Denver Broncos just suck ass. Like, we didn't need the Dolphins to put up 70 to know that.
We've known that for like 7 years, 8 years now.
Well, we got that, right? We got that, solidification right there. So there are some other things, though, I think, and as we kind of go through this and talk through some, whether it's the news, whether it's our matchup. So make sure you stick around to listen to how the matchup of the host went this week. Didn't go one of our ways, that's for sure. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And I think through some of those conversations, we'll start to really talk about what we've learned through 3 weeks and some of the players that, like an Achan, potentially like a Quentin Johnston, some of these Zay Flowers is looking really, really, some of these rookies and younger guys that are starting to rise to the top and starting to really try to force themselves into our lineups week after week. That's going to be fun to talk about as we go through today.
No, totally is. I think, with everything, we're starting to get those trends, right? We're starting to get those patterns laid out, and you're going to be able to get some more consistent guys in your lineup. Really, we're approaching the first quarter of the fantasy football season, right? These first 4 games are so important foundationally to set up just what your team has to do for the rest of the season. So like learning those trends and making sure that you're trusting your gut with what develops out of your players, ultimately you just got to trust them. I mean, at the end of the day, that they're going to start doing some producing and do it at a consistent level, because if they're doing it through the first 3 weeks and you're getting that top tier production, like there's a really good chance, barring an injury, of course, that's going to sustain.
Absolutely.
So make sure you guys are trusting those players and trusting your lineups and not second guessing yourself whenever you get some bad matchups. And of course, Trevor and I are going to be here to guide you through those with starts and sits too.
Starts and sits have looked great through 3 weeks, and we'll talk more about that. We are on a roll with that. And the other thing I'll say, just through the first quarter as we get through week 4 here, make sure, and I love looking into the underlying usage, snaps, targets, because sometimes our players aren't the ones falling into the end zone. And we got to know that there's going to be some positive regression coming in, especially if they're running all the routes, they're getting all the snaps, they're getting the targets. It might not happen. Jackson Smith and Jigba comes up in my mind right off the bat. Mm-hmm. The dude's running the routes, the dude's getting the targets. He, through 3 weeks, is a top 2 target getter on the Seattle Seahawks, but he's not getting there right now. It's just not happening. That doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player this year. That's just, we got to be patient, because once it starts to happen, as we've seen with rookie wide receivers in the past, I think he's got an opportunity to really take off. So there's other guys like that too, to where fantasy-wise hasn't looked great over the first couple weeks. But if we start to look at some of that underlying usage, start to look at those targets and routes run and snap shares, really like to see that. And then there's others that go the other way, like a Dalton Kincaid, who is actually losing snaps over the first 3 weeks. That's a weird trend, right? But he had a really good first week.
Yep.
Are we living on that week still, or should we start to adjust? So definitely looking forward to just continuing all those conversations as we go throughout the season. But let's get into some news first.
Yes, sir. So last week, I know a lot of people probably saw this Cam Akers trade. Finally, the saga in LA is over with Cam Akers. He was a healthy scratch last season. It was a personal reason thing. No one really learned about what that deal was, and then ultimately comes back into this season. Similar deal after week 1, healthy scratch, doesn't get a whole lot of play, and then finally the trade rumors come true and he goes to Minnesota, a swap of some late round picks. Initially, I'm like, man, this really sucks for Alexander Mattison and anybody that might have drafted him. But, who knows? I mean, we never really got to see Cam Akers in that prime role. And even when we did see him in just those few glimpses, I didn't see anything that really jumped off the page for me that says he's going to just steal this role from Alexander Mattison right off the jump. Now, he has that familiarity with O'Connell, right? Having worked with him in LA. So I think that's a big reason why he's getting brought in. But I mean, even just looking at the numbers from when they were together, nothing really jumped the page to me. So I don't know. How do you feel about that trade?
Yeah, I love the trade for Cam Akers. I think that this is going to give him a second opportunity to potentially shine. I think Alexander Madison's seat is hot.
Mm-hmm.
I think his seat is hot. I think that he looked bad. His yardage and his stats looked okay after Sunday's game, but from a viewer of that game, he dropped a wide open pass. Kirk Cousins missed him on a touchdown opportunity, so you can't really blame Madison for that one. He didn't look like he ran incredibly well. He fumbled the ball again. It's mistake after mistake for Madison, and I like to put Cam Akers on the back of my bench right now because given a full-time role, think about last year, at the end of last year, given a full-time role, he was a top 10 fantasy running back. If Minnesota in this offense, which is going to score a lot of points, they got to stop turning the ball over, but they're going to score plenty of points. This defense can't stop anybody in Minnesota. He's going to have an opportunity to be a good fantasy running back. He might not be a good NFL running back, but he'll have plenty of volume if he can overtake Madison. And I don't know if it happens this week or next week, but I think if Madison continues to fumble the ball and drop wide open passes, I could see a scenario where Akers definitely jumps in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that potential, right? Like, obviously, Madison has underperformed a little bit, but I feel like it's been most of the Vikings team has been underperforming this year too. So I don't know how much of that is like, pressure from the starting job, the offensive line maybe not blocking up to par, at least not what they were doing last year. Obviously, Kirk Cousins has been balling out from a fantasy perspective,
Yeah.
and what you're
JJ's
getting
doing his thing.
from JJ, yep, and Hawkinson, tight end one, I think, in all of fantasy, if I'm not mistaken. So, those three guys are really showing out, but unfortunately, Madison's just not putting it together. And who knows? With running backs, I was surprised Akers didn't at least get a couple of snaps this past Sunday.
Well, he was inactive, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, most of the time when running backs come in, even fresh off the boat, Christian McCaffrey came in and played some time.
Christian McCaffrey's a little different than Cam Akers.
Well, that's just the first example off the top of my head. But most of the running backs are able to come in and they can hit A, B, or C gap for a couple of plays, get some play in, knock that rust off, and get a little familiar with the offense and build some chemistry. So I was a little shocked.
I wonder if a little bit of it has to do with just the fact that he wasn't active in LA either, and so maybe Minnesota needs to make sure that he's got his feet under him, right? Well, how is he NFL shape? Is he actually ready to get onto the field? Maybe they wanted to get that opportunity a little bit just because it's not like they got to see film on him over the last couple of weeks because he hasn't been playing.
Right.
So just to make sure, it could have had something to do with that. But we'll see how it goes this week. I'm interested to see. I would assume about a 25% snap share this week. Probably not a lot of touches, but maybe 4 to 6 touches. We're not putting him in the lineup anytime soon, but a guy I think worthy for a bench spot right now.
For sure. Definitely don't drop him. Definitely don't do that. Another running back news, which I feel like this is like the part-time running back show with all the running back talk that we do, but Alvin Kamara coming off of that 3-game suspension for the New Orleans Saints, and just in time with Jamal Williams heading to the IR, which we'll talk about more of those injuries here in a minute.
Andre Miller didn't do much at all this past week.
No, he didn't. Disappointed a little bit. Obviously, he was coming off of an injury as well. Tony Jones, I don't know much about what he did. I don't think he really made too much of an impact, but they need Kamara back in that offense.
Yeah, the offense is not – I mean, the defense is what's really been keeping them in games and winning games, and then
absolutely
they end up actually blowing it against the Packers this week, but they scored 17 points. They only give 18 or something like that for the Packers. It's just the defense is keeping them in these games. This offense has really sputtered through 3 games, and now we get Kamara back, which is great. Unfortunately, though, losing Derek Carr for a couple weeks, right? So we're not really going to see the offense we expected that Kamara would be coming back into. Now, I don't think that's a big deal for Kamara's fantasy value. Jameis Winston will dump it off to Kamara just as Derek Carr would have. So
there's worse backup quarterback situations.
Yeah, for sure. Like Kamara is going to be primed for 25 touches a game and trying to get this offense going.
Right. No, I totally think, if you were if you're the New Orleans Saints or if you have any New Orleans Saints players, Chris Olave, obviously, Michael Thomas, and then Kamara. Obviously Derek Carr is going to be a better game manager for that team. He's going to be probably a little more accurate, a little less turnovers. But Winston's not a bad play at all. He knows how to run that offense. He was successful with it his first year as a full-time starter in New Orleans, went like 4-2 with that team before he got hurt. And he had way less weapons at that time than what he's going to have, in any absence that Derek Carr might have. So I'm not too worried about those guys long-term. Kamara, maybe this first week, I don't play him in the leagues that I'm in to see kind of how much volume he'll get. It really depends on what your situation looks like at running back, I think. For me, most of the leagues that I have him in, I have a couple other options that I feel comfortable with instead of plugging him in there. But definitely excited to have him for the rest of the season.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I would say probably most often I'm probably putting him in this week, just like you said, kind of depending on your situation. But pumped that he's finally back. So let's talk injuries here.
Yeah, the sad side of fantasy football, right? We'll start with Joe Burrow. Obviously, everybody saw that on Monday night. He was a little bit hampered. Just something to monitor. I know Trevor and we were talking pre-show about whether or not this would be an impact for T. Higgins, for Jamar Chase. This injury might not be an impact for both of them at the same time, but it seems to be an impact for at least one of them because Jamar popped off and T. Higgins was a ghost. And the week before, we saw the same situation, but she was on the other foot. T. Higgins caught 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase caught 40 yards of passes. So,
the offense just isn't the same still yet, right? Like it's just not quite there. It's not humming. They won the game, but it's not like they put up a huge offensive show. The defense really dominated this game against LA with 6 sacks, something like that. And I expect the defense to dominate again this week for them. So, the offense not quite there yet. They're in a get-right game against one of the worst pass defenses in the league this week. So we'll see how he looks against the Titans. But, I mean, you kind of gotta. I mean, Jamar Chase, you're starting every week. Higgins,
have to.
Higgins, I think you can probably play matchups here and there, but it's going to be hard stretch to find anybody else that you're going to feel more comfortable with than T. Higgins. So you're probably just playing them both most every week.
Yeah, I know I'm flexing T. Higgins where I have him. There's really not going to be a lot of scenarios that see me putting him on the bench other than maybe an injury to Joe Burrow that keeps him from playing, tell you the truth. Moving through some more quarterback news. Bryce Young practiced ankle injury, kept him out last weekend. He's trending towards playing, although Andy Dalton didn't look terrible last week. Obviously not going to start him or anything, but they were at least able to put some points on the board here and there. So nothing too bad. 27, that's got to be the highest they've scored all year, right? As a team.
Yep. Against the Seahawks.
Yep. Anthony Richardson coming back from that concussion. All signs point to him being all right there. Jimmy G concussion protocol currently, something to monitor. Obviously, that impacts Devontae Adams and his value overall. Maybe a Josh Jacobs game is in line. I don't know what they're going to. The Raiders are hard to predict to me. They're pretty bad.
Jacobs still has looked bad. Devontae Adams is still getting there. But yes, I would say if Jimmy G misses, you're not sitting Devontae Adams, but you're going to have lower expectations.
For sure. That ceiling's coming down a little bit. And then Derek Carr, we talked about him a little bit. AC joint, expected to potentially miss some time with this one. I would be very shocked to see him come right out and play this weekend. All signs are pointing to Jameis suiting up, as we kind of alluded to earlier. But potential to miss a couple of weeks here with that shoulder.
Yeah, and the Saints this week against Jameis's old team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, divisional matchup, always tough. Not necessarily trying to go after Jameis by any means, but this is tough. We kind of talked already. Like the Saints offense has been struggling. You're going to get Kamara back. Derek Carr's not a great fantasy quarterback, but he's always been okay getting your fantasy wide receivers and pass catchers the ball, right? So he's always been helpful in that sense. We all know that Jameis lives to just sling it around. So we'll kind of see how this goes. It definitely doesn't help Olave, doesn't help Michael Thomas. I don't think it's going to hurt Alvin Kamara by any means. But, yeah, Chris Olave is the main one because he's your stud that you drafted in the second round that's going to be most affected, I think, by a Derek Carr missing a few weeks here. Hopefully Carr can get back sooner rather than later.
And if not, then hopefully it's a situation where you get Jameis Winston 30 for 30 season popping off there for you so you can catch a couple bombs.
Because then it doesn't hurt Olave at all. He can throw it to Olave. He throws as many interceptions as he wants.
Right.
As long as he hits Olave 10 times and one of them for a touchdown.
Free reign at that point.
Let's go.
So Austin Eckler, we'll move it into the running back zone. Austin Eckler, limited participant today, which is good news. Tom Pelissero came out and dropped that knowledge for us just a little bit ago. I'm hoping he comes back. He had a monster week 1, has missed both weeks since. They are going up against the Vegas Raiders, who do not boast that great of a defense. So I feel like he would just carve them up, especially with the loss of Mike Williams. I mean, that was most of the reason why Eckler scored so many touchdowns last year.
Yep.
It's because Keenan Allen missed significant time. Williams missed a few games here and there, and he became the most viable option in the red zone for them, not just running, but passing and catching touchdowns as well. So I just really hope he comes back into that offense here soon and is able to make that difference for folks that have him on their team.
Yeah, Eckler being out has helped Herbert in a sense of Herbert's the number 1 quarterback, right? He's the number 1 fantasy quarterback right now. This offense has continued to hum, but the running game is absolutely non-existent. Josh Kelly is really bad. If you picked up Josh Kelly, I think you can go ahead and move on. Good job. We tried. Didn't work out. He's just as good as a garbage can out there. So really not a good football player, I don't think. He's doing absolutely nothing for this team and definitely not doing anything for your fantasy team. So from a fantasy perspective, we need Austin Eckler to get back out there. And,
I want him to give Isaiah Spiller some more opportunities.
I don't understand why they haven't. Obviously there's probably way more to it than we see on the surface level.
Oh, for sure. There always is.
I would also love to see Spiller get a little action.
Absolutely. Well, Thursday night, we got David Montgomery and the Lions showing up against the Packers. Montgomery still nursing that hammy, questionable to play, probably going to be a game time situation. I would probably stay away from him, honestly, in that regard. Jahmyr Gibbs seems like the more quality play to go with if you're leaning between a Lions running back. That's a safe bet. Even if he does play, I could see them put him on a little bit of a pitch count and kind of relying on Jahmyr Gibbs, who had a solid week last week, to do more of what he did then.
Yeah, I wish Gibbs would do more, right? I mean,
me too.
He was fine last week, but I felt like he could have smashed without him out there last week and just doesn't. Detroit in general just didn't really get it done. That game didn't really do much last week. But, yeah, Gibbs. I think Gibbs is.
He had 80 in a touchdown, right?
I don't think did he score? I don't think he scored. I don't think he scored. But,
okay, I could be off on that then.
Yeah.
Maybe he had a catch or two or something.
He was sitting around 10 points. And so I just think that, but he's good. He's a good ball. He's a fine play tomorrow night, especially if you need a running back. And I agree. Stay away from David Montgomery. But the running back on the other side is the one I'm most interested in. Are we going to get Aaron Jones tomorrow night?
Man, I would love to see it. The reports that I've been coming across kind of hint at him probably playing that game. I feel like with the hammy and everything, the Packers should probably play it safe. They're 2-1 right now. They're playing the Lions, so I think they could probably beat with A.J. Dillon back there in the prime role. It's a short week on a Thursday. you don't play Aaron Jones this week. You get 10 days rest to get him back in there for week 4 or week 5 rather. I don't know. That's if I'm the coach, if I'm LaFleur, I'm opting for that route to get him a full recovery. But from a fantasy perspective, that's just something I would monitor because if he's in, I will play him.
Yeah, definitely playing him. He's second among running backs in fantasy points per opportunity. Second to Devin Achin, who just had a 50 burger, right? So, like, you're going to have that. But, yeah, he's got 2.1 fantasy points per opportunity, and that's second amongst all running backs with, no minimal games or anything. Obviously, he missed a game, but you got to think that if he's out there, you got to put him back in your lineup, and you just got to trust he's going to play. And sometimes that's hard, right? It's a hamstring injury. He could go out and get re-injured. He sits the bench, but you don't want Aaron Jones going off on a primetime Thursday night on your bench. Just doesn't feel good. So get him in your lineups if he does start. As long as you don't get like hey, he's going to play, but it's going to be limited action. Those kind of reports. If he's a full go, he's in your lineup for sure. I didn't even check on the chat. That's my bad, guys. Good evening, Lee. Hope you guys had a better week than I did. We're going to talk about how my week went in one of our leagues here in a moment. Good or bad, it wasn't great. And just as good as Tony. Herbert's already in the chat here trolling us. You need to go rub down your boy's ACL tear, man. No, it really sucks for Mike Williams. Let's talk. We could talk some wide receivers here. Mike Williams, obviously, with the ACL tear for the Chargers. Justin Herbert in the chat, huge Chargers fan. It's not always a season injury with Mike Williams, but it's always Mike Williams getting hurt, and it sucks. Like he's really talented, but he can't stay healthy, and that just is frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating for him as a player. It's just frustrating as a fan too.
Definitely.
Like you want to see this guy out there. When the Chiefs play the Chargers, I want the Chargers to be at full health because that way when they beat them, it feels so much sweeter, right? Like they don't have as many excuses for it. But
we don't want to hear from Justin Herbert.
That's right, all the excuses. But yeah, he is always hurt, and it's a tough break. And now he is out for the season with the torn ACL.
Yep, unfortunately. Wrapping up running backs real quick. Saquon Barkley day-to-day. Be surprised to see him take any action on Sunday. Or I guess they're a Monday night game, the Giants. And
the report was he almost could have came back last week. I didn't really fully believe that.
Yeah.
We'll see how this week goes.
And then Jamal Williams placed on IR. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And then, Mike Williams. It's a tough situation for sure. So let's jump into some of these wide receivers here before we get to starts or I guess the ADP league recap for this week.
Yeah, we got to talk about that segment.
Zay Jones, knee injury. Probably something that's going to keep him out this weekend. Not that anyone's really starting Zay Jones, but the reason why this is so important is because it's going to raise the stock of Christian Kirk, of Evan Ingram, of Calvin Ridley, and then Travis Etienne might even get some more play out of the backfield in the passing game too. So there's some targets going around. Zay Jones is more that deep threat kind of guy, so I could see a lot of those deep threat balls going to Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk.
London game, right? This is the London game against Atlanta.
Yep, it's 8:30 a.m. baby. Central
Get up with the boys. I'm gonna try to find that Toy Story animated football game. So
they've been talking about
looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's so funny listening to Troy Aikman talk about it.
It'll be fun.
His enthusiasm.
It'll definitely change my Sunday mornings. I'm usually doing all DFS research and just build my lineups, but I'll have to turn that on in the background and let them kind of watch that. I think that'll be a lot of fun for them. But anyways, Jacksonville game. I think this definitely helps Christian Kirk the most. If you're on the fringe of starting Christian Kirk, if Zay Jones is out, I think it gives you more confidence there. And then another Green Bay Packer and Christian Watson.
Yep. Trending toward playing. When asked if he was playing, he said that is the plan with his hamstring. Keeping him out the first 3 games of the season. He avoided the IR, but man, you almost wonder, should they have just put him on it if it was going to take him this long to get there?
Might as well should, but I mean, if he gets out there this week, and maybe they didn't expect him to miss this long, it's just kind of been lingering. I'll talk a little bit more about Christian Watson here later on, but yeah, I hope to see him out there this week. He's a stud.
Yep, absolutely. Odell Beckham's ankle injury still kind of bothering him there. Something to monitor if you're thinking about playing a Ravens receiver not named Zay Flowers. I don't know why you would, but something to look out for. And then both of the Niners receivers having some issues. Brandon Ayuk held out that game last week with a shoulder injury, and now Deebo Samuel showing up on the injury report with a rib injury. That's kind of tough on the Niners crew. There's really not anyone else besides what's our boy from Kansas City, David Bell, is that his name? Or
David Bell,
Ronnie Bell, or what is it?
Oh, Ronnie Bell.
Ronnie Bell, yeah.
Dude, Ronnie Bell helped me win some DFS stuff this week, man. I had him in there.
Gotta love it.
Catches that touchdown.
Got to love it. Ronnie Bell, pretty much the prime pass catcher there after George Kittle, if both of those guys end up missing time. More time for Ayuk, I guess.
I was when Deebo got hit. So I had Deebo and MVP. When he got hit, I was like, God, he's not coming back in. I thought he was done for. He comes back in, catches the long touchdown.
Another one.
Puts me in first place. I cruised to the victory. It was a stressful last 6 minutes, but I ended up in first, and it took down the tournament. But when he got hit, I thought there was no way he was coming back in. And so, he looked hurt. Like, he looked like he was in some pain. I was kind of hoping he just knocked the wind out of him a little bit, but it didn't really look like that. So hopefully he can get back out there and play through. Rib injuries are not fun, I'm sure, but I do think for a he just plays so hard, it's going to be bad. But for a wide receiver, I don't think it's as bad as maybe a quarterback would be, who's getting hit over and over and over again, every single play. So hopefully he'll be able to get back out there and play this week for the Niners.
Absolutely. That really wraps up the old injury rundown. I mean, obviously there's some other players there you'll want to monitor with questionable tags, but those are going to be the big ones, the big guys that, are on the fence of playing or not. Yeah, I mean, Trevor, you got anything else any other injuries we might have missed? I don't know.
No injuries, but big news on the ADP front. My boy Dan takes it down.
The first win of the season is a sweet one and a nail biter.
2-0 versus 0-2 this week. Really wanted to talk about it last week's show. Unfortunately, we weren't able to come on here and talk to you all, but wanted to kind of recap it real quick and just, obviously congratulations to you for getting a first win, first victory.
Good game, brother.
Man, good game indeed. I knew I was in trouble when Daniel Jones started the week off with a big old 4.98 against the San Francisco 49ers.
He put the sub 5 up, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll have this in the bag. And
that was just rough. I got Devin Achane on the bench with the 50 burger. Not that I was playing him. I mean, there's no way. Maybe for Gus Edwards, but Gus Edwards was supposed to be healthy. He was healthy when to start the game. He gets hurt during the game. I did sit T. Higgins. He was a sit of the week for me last week. We'll talk about that here in a minute. I did sit T. Higgins. That was the right play there. Really, that's all I had. I played all the right plays. You can't say Achane on the bench was a wrong play because he had done 0 for the first 2 games. So on my side of things, Tyreek goes off. Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle comes in and gets the touchdown. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
Kind of a bummer. If Tony Pollard takes that screen pass to the house instead of Dowdle, this game's a little different there. And Brian Robinson, who is RB2 through the first 2 weeks, just a tough matchup against this Bills team. So I didn't feel like there was much else I could have done this week. Maybe found a different quarterback to stream this week. I probably could have done that. But how do you feel about your team?
Yeah, I mean, altogether, obviously, I went 0 RB strategy with my draft, and it has kind of been biting me in the ass this year. We expected Dalvin Cook to be a little bit better than he was with Aaron Rodgers in play. Obviously, no Aaron Rodgers going to be out there this season. So my running backs together put up a combined 10 points between the two that started.
Yeah, Javonte and AJ Dillon with no Aaron Jones. You kind of expected a little more out
I
of him.
expected more out of that for sure. New Orleans put up a stiff defense against him. Javonte Williams, that game got out of hand fast, so he pretty much became a non-factor. They weren't running the ball much after that. Jamar Chase, man, popped off. Loved seeing that. Chris Olave has been steady Eddie this year, getting 6 catches, 80 to 100 yards. I mean, I think he caught a touchdown or 2 this year so far. DeAndre Hopkins has been a disappointment in that Tennessee Titans offense. Mark Andrews, definitely expected more out of him going against the Colts. Other than that, man, my pickup of the week has to be the Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
Yeah.
I believe they were on the waivers last week, and I had to scoop him. But I mean, if you look at my bench, like no one really making an impact there other than Jordan Love. Clyde Edwards was surprised with the touchdown, but there's no chance you're putting him in your lineup.
They blew him out. He had 15 carries. He's never going to see 15 carries in a close game like that.
All 3 of the running backs scored touchdowns in that game. So I mean, that's just not something that's going to happen very often. So I mean, yeah, you know, I pretty much the guys that were in my starting lineup, unless there's a bye, that's who you're going to be. That's who I'm going to have to play. Like it's going to be a tough season for me for sure with the running back room.
I mean, the biggest difference was Herbert versus Jones. I mean, that was if you go through here, everybody's pretty close. 30, 26, 17, 18, 8, 7. Like it's pretty close. And then you get this 25-point differential at the quarterback position. You're rolling out QB1 and I'm rolling out QB none. And it's just it can't keep up. So no, good game to you. I'm going to talk about Daniel Jones again here in a little while as well. I think that he's got opportunity there. Just a really bad match against the 49ers and Justin Herbert QB1. And I think
tough defense.
It'll keep happening. I want to say my streaming defense on the sheet last week was the Chiefs, and that was a great. I picked them up in almost every league because nobody was picking them up yet because they weren't turning the ball over and getting a bunch of big defensive scores, but they aren't giving up points. And so that was a good pickup as well. I think we both did well streaming defenses last week. You want to do a couple start sits real quick?
Let's get in there, dude. Recapping last week's starts and sits. I know we didn't have an episode, but I did tweet those out on our account on Twitter at ADP podcast _FF. If you want to follow us there, we'll put out starts and sits. Of course, you can join us in the Discord as well. I know we pumped the link out a few times there, but posted the starts and sits for last week in there as well. Basically, we grade them. Our starts have to finish inside the top 12. Our sits have to finish outside. Same rules apply for running backs with top 24, receivers top 35, tight ends top 12. So these are all guys that are going to start or should start on all of your teams if you're in a 12-man league, basically is kind of how we position it. So last week, starts went 3-1 on my starts. What was the miss there? I guess I should pull up last week's.
I got it here for you. So last week, 3-1. You and I both went 3-1. I was gonna put it on. I did take one off 2 weeks ago. You had Richardson; he got hurt, so we didn't count that one because you can't. What are you gonna do about that? You know what I mean?
Yep, nothing you can do there.
Let's see. I'm gonna try to pull it up here. Last week, you had Justin Fields. No, that was a sit. That was a good one. You had Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid at tight end didn't do it.
Total bummer there. Unfortunately, didn't get the snap share you wanted.
That's right.
But that was a blowout too, so I don't know how much of that impacted.
And the only one I missed last week on starts was I had Najee Harris against Las Vegas, who is a terrible run defense. And so, but Harris is maybe not good at football. Maybe Pittsburgh's not good at football. I'm not 100% sure yet, but that Las Vegas defense is not good. So
their offense is just, it's a formality at this point that they even have an offense. Like someone has to be on the field when the defense is not, and that's why those guys are there. That's the way it feels to me.
I would agree with that. Before we get into,
we crushed collectively.
Go ahead. Yeah, we did.
Since we 6-1, it looks like maybe 7-1. I think all 4 of mine hit.
7-1. We had another no contest for you because
Akers. That's right.
So we just did not play. But yeah, you went 3-0. I went 4-1. I had Zach Moss. Oof. He ends up as a top 5 running back, so I'll take the big L on that.
Expect more from the Ravens there.
Yeah, exactly. But a couple big ones. I had Burrow and Higgins. I said sit them. You said sit Justin Fields, Terry McLaurin. So as we go through these start sits, and we'll answer some of your questions. If you have start sits in the chat, throw them in the chat now. We'll also answer those for you as we go through this. But when we tell our start sits, we're trying to give you guys that you are actually thinking about.
Right.
What's kind of your process to this? Because what I kind of try to do is I try to kind of look at consensus around rankings, pull up a couple rankings here and there.
Yeah.
Like a T. Higgins last week, he's ranked, wide receiver 15. And for me, I wanted really no part of that with the Joe Burrow calf situation. Wasn't sure how that was going to go. And I don't think T. Higgins is landing in, a top 24 wide receiver, but he's being ranked on ESPN, on NFL.com, wherever you want to get your rankings from. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of go about figuring out who to even think through this process?
Yeah, obviously I rule out the no-brainer guys. Mahomes, Josh Allen, those guys are never going to appear on a list like this unless something major is going on. Which would shock me. So it would be an anomaly to even see those kind of guys on here. Justin Jefferson's always going to be starting. What I like to look at are defensive and offensive rankings. So, I guess offensive rankings if you're talking about streaming a defense. Other than that, it's defensive rankings, and it's not just total ranking. It's how many points is this defense giving up to X position group, or what is this defense's rush defense ranked across the NFL? And then I'll grab a running back that is facing the defense. And if they did something comparable to another defense kind of in that range, then I'll trust them to replicate that production. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like that's really the big piece for me is making sure that whenever I plug a player in here, the matchup is quality and it's not going to be any kind of situation where, you also have to predict what the overall game is going to come out to be, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to play a running back on a team that you expect to win because they're going to get more volume in that scenario where they're leading the game the whole time. They're leaning more on the running game and you're picking up those points at the end. And then vice versa, if there's a team that you expect to get blown out, they're going to pass the ball a ton and your receivers are going to get a lot of play. So those are all scenarios that I take into account for as well, too.
Yeah. 100%. Let's answer a couple questions here from the chat. Who should I start? Oh, gosh. IDP league.
IDP, wow.
Jack Campbell, Kaiser White, Denzel Perryman, or Shaq Leonard?
Kaiser White's in Arizona. Perriman's the Chargers. Campbell is he in Detroit?
Man, you are way more of a, get your boots on the ground, get your hand in the dirt NFL guy than I am.
Yeah,
I am
Jack Campbell's in Detroit and Shaq Leonard's in.
I'm a numbers guy. Tell me what the numbers are. I don't know where these guys play.
Let me pull up the schedule here. I don't always have IDP numbers just ready off the top of the dome. Like I know where these guys are playing, of course. So let's look at week 4 schedule.
I've got an IDP league. Should I go just look at what are they projected in my IDP league that I'm playing?
Well, Jack
so
Campbell's
bad at
going
this
up
league.
against the Packers in Green Bay. Kaiser White in Arizona is going against San Fran's offense. Denzel Perriman is taking on the Raiders at home. That's a nice little matchup, especially with the potential for Garoppolo to be out. And then Shaq Leonard's hosting the Rams. Personally, I mean, if I'm just going purely off of a guy that I'll never like, if I'm taking the same approach as I take with a traditional fantasy league, then I'm playing my studs, and Shaq Leonard is a stud, obviously. That might be the route I go, just because I'm not like overly impressed with the Rams offense either. Like, I think there's a lot of potential for him to put up some numbers from a defensive standpoint. Now, just kind of looking at his production so far this year, nothing too crazy jumps off the page just quite yet. He's got like 20 tackles, but he does have that run stuff there. So I don't know. With IDP, it's a little bit weird. It also depends on like what you're scoring, how that scoring plays out, because that can vary so much, right? Like, obviously you're going to get points for turnovers, but what are tackles looking like? Is that really going to carry more weight there? If so, then a guy like Leonard's going to fly around the field, but Campbell's been pretty solid too from what I've seen so far as a rookie. So yeah, I'd lean towards one of those two guys to give you the long-winded answer.
There you go, Justin. Campbell or Shaq Leonard. And then Lee says Kyron Williams, Zach Moss, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara. This is a 10-team league with an 8-year-old and my wife who does not do anything with fantasy football. So that's why he's, when he starts to name all these running backs, it's like, oh, that makes sense.
No, absolutely. It's a stat.
But yeah, I think Kyron Williams is absolutely the hot name. Zach Moss got 30 carries last week, man. Like, they just fed him and fed him and fed him.
I don't think there's anything that's not like that's keeping me from starting Zach Moss moving forward. He's just getting so much volume.
A lot of volume. And
other than Jonathan Taylor coming back.
Well, which I don't anticipate happening.
Long
it's
shot.
Not happening this week, obviously, right? Yeah, I think I like Zach Moss. Which is weird. Didn't really expect that against the Rams. I think I'm probably gonna go ahead and sit Aaron Jones if I have this much, just because of the hamstring injury. And I'm probably gonna just go Williams and Moss against each other, and maybe I can fit Kamara into the flex, but just run those two guys against each other. Kyron Williams right now also getting way too much volume to sit, I feel like. So that's kind of the way I would run it.
Yeah, I mean, we've already kind of talked about Jones and Kamara early in the show too. It's like, take the safe approach with those two guys. But if you have two other solid running backs that have been getting the touches, why not keep them in the lineup for another week?
Yeah. And more IDP stuff. Hamilton got 56 points. This is crazy. I didn't know that defensive guys could score that many on IDP.
It's like when Alex Highsmith last year was just dominating for that team we were in, IDP.
Ooh. We missed Harold Landry all season. Was it Harold Landry?
Yeah, no kidding.
Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, Puka, DJ Moore, Mike Evans. Pick 3 for the week. I'll let you straight off the top. This is really easy for me, but I want to see, is it as easy for you or?
I mean, for me, right off the jump, I'm going Keenan Allen, number 1. No Mike Williams is a big plus for me against the Raiders defense. I mean, the Raiders defense couldn't stop a nosebleed, so that's where I'm at there. You got to keep Puka in. He's getting way too much play. We'll see what happens after Cooper Kupp comes back, but you got to keep him in there. And then I'm going Mike Evans. Dude's top 5 wide receiver in fantasy right now. Baker Mayfield loves throwing him the ball. He's caught a touchdown in every game, is getting like double-digit targets. You can't not play Mike Evans right now.
Yep, way too easy for me. I'm 100% on board with that. Michael Thomas is dealing with a backup quarterback and Jameis Winston against a pretty solid defense in the Buccaneers. And DJ Moore is dealing with a dumpster fire of an entire organization. So
it's rough. I feel bad
for
him.
Puka and Mike Williams for sure. If Eckler's out, Kelly or Achane. I mean, I'm going back to Achane because Joshua Kelly is not good at football.
Absolutely, Achane.
And Achane only needs like 3 touches to do something with it.
Now I'm interested to see the Bills defense. I think it's scaring some people from playing the Dolphins running backs, but the Bills defense hasn't had a true test yet. Right? They've put up some solid numbers in terms of pass and rush defense, but this will be the first true bona fide test for them against a quality team, and I think Achane still has potential to put up points.
Yeah, if you remember back on that Monday night, Cook and Brees Hall both looked pretty good, really, and they haven't looked good since because Zach Wilson's their quarterback. But they both looked pretty good against this Bills team. And then the Bills played a has-been Raiders team, and then Washington last week again. They just got out of hand so quickly, like it didn't really matter. So I'm with you. I'm not really that worried about this Bills defense. So, I definitely am worried about Joshua Kelly. So, Achane Kelly is asked for real, and that's coming from a Chargers fan. So
he knows the Kelly deal.
Okay. So we're gonna get our start and assist, but I'm gonna address this because I agreed with this. Justin Herbert in the chat. If you're an audio listener, we love that you're listening to us. Come check us out on YouTube, man. You all can get the chats going and understand what we're talking about there. Justin says Keenan Allen is the best wide receiver in the AFC West. First of all, I wasn't totally against it, although Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the AFC West.
I mean,
I wasn't like totally like I could listen to the argument, right? But when you say even if Tyreek was still there, then I'm like, nope, I'm out. You're just being a homer at that point. You know Tyreek is one of the best in the NFL. I think he's really putting himself into the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase category at this point. Like Tyreek Hill is easily a top 3 wide receiver, I believe. So, but Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the AFC West. So, by a long shot. All right, let's get into our starts and sits. Enough of the heckling of the chat.
Absolutely. I'll get it kicked off with my quarterback for this week, and I'm going with Jordan Love against Detroit at home. Jordan Love has been pretty solid this year, putting up some top 10 numbers at the quarterback position. I've had a couple people reach out to me about him in the ADP league. Actually, he's been sitting on my bench behind Justin Herbert. But yeah, I mean, I got to roll with him here. Nothing about the Detroit defense really impresses me. I mean, even in a losing effort, Mahomes had a really good game. We saw Geno Smith dominate against that defense too. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's not playing right now, so that's a big hole in their secondary. And with Christian Watson possibly coming back, that just boosts my confidence in him. So I'm starting Jordan Love, not in our ADP league, of course, because I have Justin Herbert. But if I'm between him and maybe Joe Burrow, I'm probably starting Jordan Love over him. You know what I mean? So that's my start of the week at quarterback this week.
Well, I love your start of the week at quarterback because I'm going to talk about him a little later on because he is very, very under rostered. Like I'm seeing like 30% rostered on ESPN leagues. So yeah, I love me some Jordan Love. I'm going Daniel Jones of the New York Giants against the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle 24th in passer rating against this defense. They're 31st in passing yards per game against them. Daniel Jones, obviously a complete dud last week. Can't even give me 5 points in the ADP league. He has a terrible week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. 2 frustrating weeks, but it's against the Cowboys and the 49ers, y'all. Like, those are 2 really good defenses. Don't tell Josh Dobbs that, but those are 2 really good defenses, right? And so he has the 1 bad defense against the Arizona Cardinals, and he absolutely dominates. I think he ended up as like a top 3 quarterback that week. Seattle is a pretty bad defense. Like this, you mentioned it off the top when you said Carolina scored the most points they scored all year with Andy Dalton at the helm. Like Seattle's defense isn't good. Give me some Daniel Jones against this Seahawks team. I expect him to dominate another bad defense.
Yeah, I think the big thing is like for Daniel Jones is just making sure that they have at least some semblance of a running game to support him with Matt Breida kind of leading the charge there. Other than that, man, I think there's a lot of potential there with Seattle. I'm just surprised you're putting your eggs in the Daniel Jones basket again for another week.
I can't stop it for some reason, man. I just can't stop it.
For my start at running back, I'm going with B. Robinson. Obviously, you're going to start Bijan, but this one's Brian Robinson Jr. He's the clear-cut number one back in Washington. They're going up against Philly. That might startle you a little bit, but I like his potential here. The Philly defense really hasn't been lights out against the run game by any means. Obviously, they have a very solid defense. They're really good at forcing turnovers. They're really good at bending and not breaking and that sort of thing. They force a lot of QB pressure, but Brian Robinson has been a machine so far this year, even against the Bills defense, who a bunch of people are saying is a very solid defense this year. He put up some serviceable numbers, no touchdown that really hurt him, but he had 10 carries for 70 yards, 7-yard average on a carry. I'll take that going into Philly, especially if I'm looking at all of the injuries with running backs right now. That's a really safe play, so I'm going Brian Robinson for mine.
Yeah, Brian Robinson has been really, really good. And actually, that was one of my start set questions. Brian Robinson versus Rachaad White, catching passes out of the backfield. I think he's gotten 10 passes already this year in Tampa. But I think I'll go Brian Robinson. If he's your start of the week, I'll take him over Rachaad White. Before we get to mine, I want to hear your thoughts on this because a couple guys we've already just mentioned is a part of a trade that Nate puts in the chat here. Gibson and Rachaad White for Jacobs and Gainwell, 14-team league. Group of 6 was split 50-50 on it being highway robbery. Is it a dynasty league? Because if it's a dynasty league, like I'm probably taking the Rachaad White side anyways. If it's a straight redraft league, to me, Gibson and Gainwell are nothing. It's really a Rachaad White for Josh Jacobs. I think that I would rather have Josh Jacobs the rest of the season. I think if I had Josh Jacobs, I would definitely be trying to trade him, but try to get something more out of him because of his name and not just Rachaad White. So I do think that the person getting Jacobs is probably going to be in the better situation. Jacobs going to have some positive regression coming, right?
Yeah. It's hard not to feel that way because of the name, too. I feel like a lot of people in the league is like, Josh Jacobs was RB1 last year when it comes to rushing yards. And, I mean, I don't know. This is like with Gainwell, he still gets some meaningful snaps, but I don't think his value is anything more than what you're going to get from Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
Rachaad White, I mean, none of these players have really blown me away necessarily. So I think it's just it's a pretty even trade in my mind.
I don't think it's highway robbery. I would probably lean Jacobs, but I don't think it's highway robbery because I believe in Rachaad White. I wouldn't call myself a truther. He's going to be the greatest, but I believe in Rachaad White, and he catches passes pretty well. Josh Jacobs doesn't really catch a whole lot of passes. And if you just straight up believe this Vegas team is going to just dissipate, which is something I kind of believe in right now, I don't think they're going to be good at all, then maybe you're just hey, look, I want to get out of this thing before it happens and give me a little Rachaad White instead. So I don't hate it, and I definitely don't think it's highway robbery.
Yeah, at the end of the season, if someone were to tell me Rachaad White finished higher than Josh Jacobs, it wouldn't blow my mind.
Yeah. Herbie in here, Herbie from the Lou. He's also a member of ADP. I thought maybe this was a trade, but I think this trade actually literally just happened in our dynasty league. Puka and Zach Moss for a 25 first and a 26th fourth. Dude, I'm saying go for it. I think you're going for it in this league. So, yeah, if I can get Puka right now, it's a little rich, but Puka looks like the real deal. And in this moment, I mean, you got a long time to get the 25 first back. So try to go for it if you're going to go for a win this year, championship.
It's 2 drafts removed. Obviously, 24, I'm keeping my first round picks, not knowing what's going to go on with my team in 23 and how, that those rookies coming up are going to be super impactful. And yeah, just like what you said, you got more time to acquire another 25 first. Like you could literally flip that next year. You know what I mean? Like if Puka doesn't turn out to be what you think he's going to be,
or if your team doesn't go the way you want it to go and you just want to say, all right, well, I'll give Puka back to somebody else for a 25.
Yeah, you could flip it this year, literally.
Yeah, so. Mike, I knew I got a text about this trade like 10 minutes ago. So well, he's all over it. I'm the commissioner in the league. So like, hey, we got a trade that needs to be pushed through. I'm like, chill. We got a show to run. Let me get back to the starts. I'm going Jerome Ford against the Baltimore Ravens. You said earlier, like we expected a little bit more out of this Ravens defense. We didn't get it last week, right? Baltimore gave up 30 carries for 122 yards, allowed Zach Moss to finish as RB5 last week. Jerome Ford, his first week without the big Chubb, he ends up RB7. Now he catches a touchdown pass. He doesn't do great on the ground, but that's against the Tennessee Titans team that we've really been avoiding for running backs. And I'm literally going to talk about them again during my sits today because I'm avoiding this team on this defense with running backs, and Jerome Ford still found a way to get it done and ended up as a top 10 running back. I'm not worried about Kareem Hunt. I do believe this is Jerome Ford's backfield, and they're utilizing him in multiple different ways that I think he can get there against the Ravens.
Yeah, that's he definitely has looked pretty good in Chubb's absence. So, Kareem Hunt also dealing with a little bit of an injury. I had a little report just pop up during the show. So not that Kareem Hunt really impacted the game a ton in his in his first start back with the team, or first game back with the team since Jerome Ford got the start. But no, I don't think that's a bad play at all, especially with what we saw from Zach Moss there too, for sure. I'm going wide receiver, Michael Pittman Jr. going against the LA Rams. Anthony Richardson's coming back. Pittman had some pretty solid games the first couple weeks with Richardson under center. Nothing about the Rams defense screams lockdown in the passing game to me. Obviously, Jamar Chase just had himself a game against that defense. So I got to go Michael Pittman here to jump back into the top 25 and be a starting caliber wide receiver.
This was an interesting one because I originally put Pittman down as a sit for myself.
Oh, really?
But the more I was literally trying to do some research and figure out why. And the more I looked into it, the volume is there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had 8 catches in every game with or without Richardson. He hasn't gotten the touchdowns and the yardage isn't like off the charts, but the volume is there. And I was like, no way am I sitting this guy. He needs to be in your lineups. He needs to be in your lineups. And the Rams, like you said, are not really phenomenal. They're like middle of the pack. So
yeah,
just go after it. I'm going Christian Watson tomorrow night. If he plays, if he's going to be on the field starting and he's going to have a full go at it, I get it. Coming off injury, it feels a little scary. We drafted this guy high, though. He's going to be a star. We expect him to be a star. I expect him to be a star. I'm getting on the train early. If he's starting tomorrow, I'm playing him.
No, with Christian Watson, he's the clear number one there in Green Bay when he's playing. I've honestly been just dying to see him back on the field, to tell you the truth. After we saw what we saw at the end of last season, just the way that he was able to pop off in that offense, like he's legitimate, and you just hope that these injuries in back-to-back seasons isn't like foreshadowing anything. But he's been solid for sure, and I'm ready to see him back on the field. I like that start if he's playing, of course.
Absolutely.
Which he should.
You're going back to the well here and tied in, huh?
I'm dipping right back in 2 straight weeks to Dalton Kincaid. He let me down last week, but this week against Miami, I could absolutely see this being a shootout kind of game. Miami's defense is bad, man. They let up a lot of yards, a lot of points. They let the lowly Broncos score 20 points, which I think is like their second highest total on the year after that big game against. I took a Hail Mary against the Commanders to hit that peak they hit there, but basically Dalton Kincaid, despite the trend that you talked about a little bit earlier, I think has a lot of potential to put up top 12 tight end numbers at the very least, with maybe a ceiling for a little bit more, just given the nature of this game. Being in Buffalo, it's not the middle of winter, so the weather's not going to be totally god awful up there. And they're playing a very, very sorry Miami Dolphins defense, which if that offense wasn't what it was, they'd be doing a lot worse for sure. So they're like the 2018 Chiefs right now in terms of offensive production versus defensive production. So I got to rock with Dalton Kincaid again.
Yeah, and I was looking up that snapshot. He has definitely lost, but I was thinking about it as you were talking. I mean, they blew him out. Like, why would he need to keep playing? He was only 51% of the snaps yesterday, but targets are still there. He's still leading the tight ends in targets on that team, so he's going to be involved. And if it's a shootout, highest total on the week right now. So if it's a shootout, might as well get as many Bills in there. I'm going to talk about my favorite Buffalo Bill here momentarily as well. But first, I'm going Gerald Everett. So I'm kind of going back to the well, taking your boy here against Las Vegas. No Mike Williams now. Still don't know about Eckler, so potentially he's not going to be there. This literally gives me 2022 vibes, right? When there was no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams, it was all Eckler, all Gerald Everett. Now you might not get Eckler, and you definitely don't have Mike Williams. It's going to be all Keenan Allen, all Gerald Everett. Don't be fooled by the 2 touchdowns by Donald Parham last week. It was his only 2 targets in the game. He's a blocking tight end that they'll use occasionally around the goal line. It just so happened to work out last week. Gerald Everett is the pass-catching tight end, and now with Mike Williams vacating all those targets, Everett becomes the 3rd highest targeted player on this team, behind only Keenan Allen and Joshua Palmer. I think that, and Gerald Everett, he had 8 targets versus Parham's 2, so I'm not worried about that. Like, Everett is the pass-catching tight end on this team, and we already talked about Herbert being QB1 on the season so far. This team's going to continue to throw the ball a lot under Kellen Moore. I like what I've seen so far from the offense in terms of fantasy production. Brandon Staley is an absolute moron. I'll just say that. Why are you going for it on 4th down at your own 30 with 2 minutes to go in the game? It works out for him, but he would have been the laughingstock in the NFL had the Minnesota Vikings won that game.
He might have gotten fired. I mean, let's be straightforward with it. He might have very easily gotten fired.
It worked out for him this time, but it just sometimes I love the going for it on 4th down. I love how aggressive he is, but that's you're too far. Like, that's overkill. You gotta be smarter than that. Make them drive the length of the field if they're gonna beat you.
Absolutely. Other side of the coin, man. We're going sits here.
Throw that in there. Fantasy football show. Let me get my NFL take in.
Yeah, I just need to get some stress out a little bit. I need to get the monkey off my back.
Let's talk sits, Dan. What's your opinion on CJ Stroud?
Very good transition, Lee. I appreciate you jumping on the chat and kind of helping us with that here. Basically, CJ Stroud, I love what I've seen from him so far. He's thrown the ball over 40 times every game. It's clear.
They just let him freaking rip it, man.
It's clear that they want him to get opportunities out there to either fail or succeed. And he's really not doing anything that's costing them the game.
Deep.
Yeah, Tank Dell's been amazing. He's getting Robert Woods some looks and some play there. Nico Collins is their wide receiver 1, and he's popping off. Didn't have a crazy week last week like he did the week before, but I mean, I really do like CJ Stroud, and I ended up picking him up in one of my other leagues. It's a keeper league where like, I just like to have some rookies in my back pocket. You never know
Yep.
what's going to happen with it. So, CJ Stroud, ton of respect for him. Love what I've seen from him on the field so far. I think he's going to develop into a nice quarterback and buck the Ohio State Buckeyes QB trends that we've seen the last couple of years. However, I am not starting him this week against that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. There's no way. There's a snowball's chance in hell that he's going to do anything that he's done the last couple weeks against that defense. Even though the game is in Houston, there's nothing I like about putting a rookie quarterback against that defense led by TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and all the rest of the studs that are on that team. I mean, they're just the deepest roster defense in the league, in my opinion. And they've just been doing nasty things to opposing quarterbacks, and I want no part of it.
Yeah, I'm down for that. I love CJ Stroud. I've loved what I've seen from him so far. I thoroughly enjoy how they're playing this.
Me too.
Like, just go play ball. Like, just fling that thing all around the football field. Now, it's really kind of damaged Dameon Pierce's fantasy value because last year they didn't have that, so they just handed him the rock 30 times.
Like 20, 30 carries a game.
So it's kind of lowered his fantasy value. But yeah, these wide receivers around him. I played a lot of Tank Dell. Not enough. I should have played it more, but I played a lot of Tank Dell and DFS last week. It worked out really well there. So
Love that.
I like what they're doing in Houston. Give him an opportunity. And they flat stomped the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, this is also a team that's trying to win ball games. And so you like to see that a lot. And I agree. Not this week, not against that Pittsburgh defense. But don't drop him. Put him on the end of your bench, and there'll be opportunities. When they play the Jags again, when they play the teams like the Colts. I mean, really, when they play any of these divisional games, the Tennessee Titans are one of the most pass funnel defenses in the league. You're gonna love to play him against them. So I think he'll probably end up on streaming quarterbacks or starts of the week here over the next 8 to 10 weeks a couple of times. So
multiple times.
My sit of the week for quarterback is going to be Russell Wilson against the Chicago Bears. Don't fall for this trap. It's a trap. I'm all in on this is a trap. I get it. Chicago Bears are really bad, but so is Russell Wilson, and so is this Denver Broncos offense. Yeah. If you take away that 50-yard Hail Mary that you alluded to just earlier against the Washington Commanders, that 50 yards plus 6 for a touchdown or whatever, 10, 11 points, takes him back down to 15 points. That would be 3 straight games at 15 fantasy points. And there's just no ceiling for Russell Wilson. There's no ceiling for this Denver Broncos offense right now. I'm still sitting him. I don't care how bad the Bears are. The Broncos aren't much better. So I'm not necessarily just going to go and throw Russell Wilson in there just because he's playing the Bears. Most of the time I try to find those matchups, but Russ hasn't shown me anything to give me confidence, even if it is against the Bears.
No, and to tell you the truth with Russell Wilson, there's a friend of mine who's a Broncos fan, and interesting enough, he put up a post that said something about the first part. He said, really, the stats for Russell Wilson and Mahomes aren't much different, which he's right. You know what I mean? Like, they both have the same number of interceptions. Mahomes has 1 more touchdown, a couple more passing yards, like literally 5 or 6 more passing yards. They have similar QBRs and all that stuff. But the second part was that he said that he's playing better than him, which really that's just not the truth at all. He's getting all of these points in the junk parts of games. He's obviously not turning the ball over like he was last year, but it's not resulting in wins. And I don't like his odds against this Chicago team either. Funny thing, I'm not really big on any player in that Bears or Denver Broncos game at all. I almost put DJ Moore in my sit spot of the week. I ended up opting for another receiver here. But, I don't blame you for not liking Russell Wilson this week. For running back, I'm going with Najee Harris going against the Houston Texans on the road. Man, it's been brutal for him. I think he's finished like outside the top 35 all 3 weeks so far. It's just been really ugly for Najee for whatever reason. He's just not. I don't know if it's the offensive line just isn't giving him holes the way that he used to get earlier or his rookie year, or maybe he just doesn't have the burst that he used to have. I'm not quite sure what it is. I can't really put my finger on it, but whatever it is, he's having a negative impact on my fantasy team. That's the only reason why I followed him so closely. And I just think it's better to look at some other options, even with all the running back injuries. There's just no way I'm starting him this week. And I know this matchup looks juicy too, but it's just not something I want to play with.
He's played all 3 games, and he is currently running back 48 in total points. He's played all 3 games. Kenneth Gainwell has more points than he has. Clyde has more. Rico Dowdle, Chuba freaking Hubbard. There's some names out there that you're just like, what? Latavius Murray, the ghost of Latavius Murray, has more. And his counterpart, Jaylen Warren, who kind of seems like he might be taking over this backfield.
He's the clear best option in the passing game in the backfield.
So, yeah, just I'm with you there. Got to see it before I'm willing to put him back out there right now. I'm going with a guy who's not that far down the total points so far this year, and that's Joe Mixon.
He looked pretty good.
Cincinnati Bengals. He's top 15 running back right now. I said it before. I'm just going to continue this narrative of sitting my running backs when they play the Tennessee Titans. Ford got there last week. He caught that touchdown pass out of the backfield, but he did nothing on the ground. Nobody has done anything on the ground against Tennessee. They're holding opponents to a very nice 69 rushing yards per game, but that's with being ran on 40% of the time because the Tennessee's not winning, right? No. So their teams are getting up on Tennessee and then trying to run the ball to slow the game down. It's not working for these teams so far. It doesn't matter if they run the ball 40% of the time or 80% of the time. They're not getting anything on the ground. This Tennessee front is for real. Yeah. I've talked about it, I think, all 3 weeks now. And I think that the Bengals are going to find plenty of success through the passing game. So I expect them. That's where they're going to go. And potential big games for Higgins and Chase incoming, and kind of just, sit Mixon out. Now, the hard part is you might not have a better option than Joe Mixon, and that's understandable. But if you've got options out there, then I'm going to go ahead and make that move and sit Mixon because this Tennessee defense is just too good.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about that Tennessee front for good reason. Obviously, they've got some big uglies in that front seven, and Vrabel knows how to run a tight ship on defense. So I don't blame you there for one to plug Mixon in on the bench spot for this week. For me at wide receiver, I opted away from DJ Moore because I think this is a little more relevant with the Mike Williams injury, and it's because I want to sit Quentin Johnston this week. Do not rush to plug him into your lineup despite what the matchup might imply against the Raiders. I think from a game situation standpoint, there's a really good chance the Chargers go up early on this Raiders defense and then milk the clock away in the run game. Maybe you don't get as much play in the passing game. I think it's been evident that Quentin Johnston has not been the number 3 wide receiver. It's been Trey Palmer who's gotten more of the play, and as far as the third wide receiver spot goes. So now he's moving into the third wide receiver spot, but he's only had like 8 targets over the course of 3 games. So they're easing this rookie into the offense clearly. Kellen Moore, he loves to throw the ball, of course, but I just don't see the game scenario playing out in a way that's going to give him enough opportunities. And I know they're not going to get him the ball early in the game. They're going to feed it to Gerald Everett. They're going to feed it to Keenan Allen, Trey Palmer. Eckler plays. He's getting more targets and passes out of the backfield than Johnston's going to get. I'm just not in love with him this week at all. Now, as the season progresses, maybe we start to catch a new trend with him, then you can start to consider him, but I'm not vibing with it this week.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make too, like to bring that up, because I could see our listeners just really kind of, oh, sweet. Mike Williams isn't out. I got Quentin Johnston. I'm putting him in,
Right.
and kind of just hold, chill. Let's not do that. Also, one correction: Joshua Palmer, Trey Palmer, I believe, plays for the Bucks. But that was you said
Josh
Trey.
Palmer. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Joshua
you. Yeah.
Palmer. You said it once, but then when you said it twice, I was like, all right, I better make sure that they know.
Yeah. Josh
Most
Palmer.
people probably know, but just to make sure that they know, Joshua
That's
Palmer
an
and
important
Joshua Palmer,
clarification.
like Quentin Johnston's going to be the popular pickup. I didn't really check waivers and see how much he got picked up.
Definitely pick him up.
Josh Palmer might not have got picked up, so go check out your waivers to see if he's still chilling on the free agent list because, yeah, he's second in targets right now on the team after Mike Williams is gone. So,
yep.
And they're going to continue to use him. So, I'm going with Zay Flowers this week. He kind of sits in the rankings around like that flex-worthy type of play across the industry, but not this week. Cleveland first, the best team in the NFL against the pass right now. Flowers has looked really good. He's had a lot of great volume. There's nothing really negative to say about Zay Flowers. I just expect this Baltimore-Cleveland game to become kind of a mucked up, like let's dogfight, and it's going to be slow and just that divisional game. We know how these kind of go, right?
Oh yeah,
and that
especially
to
in the
me,
AFC North.
Oh yeah, becomes a Mark Andrews. The 20 times that Lamar actually throws it, he's probably going to look at Mark Andrews 10 times and just not going to be able to have the opportunities with Zay Flowers as much this week, and it's against one of the best defenses in the league in terms of passing yards, passing plays, those kind of things against them. So, I'm going to go ahead and sit Zay Flowers this week.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. AFC North is down and dirty, and they're always low-scoring games when those two teams play. So there's nothing attractive about that to me for sure. Going back to my sits, Jake Ferguson with the Dallas Cowboys. They're tight end. He's been playing pretty solid the last couple weeks, but going against this New England defense, I just don't. I mean, typically Bill Belichick has a really good knack for shutting down rookie players in general. And then their defense is always super well coached. And I don't know, there's just nothing about this game that really screams to me to play him. So I'm really going to opt for him to be outside of the top 12 this week. I don't think that's going to be like the long-term play. Obviously, it's strictly the matchup here that's telling me to kind of leave him on the bench.
Yeah, and that's why we do start sits, right? It's looking for these matchups that aren't necessarily great for us. I think Ferguson is going to become a thing in Dallas. He seems to be good, but yes, New England's always pretty good against the tight end position. I'm going Luke Musgrave tomorrow night against Detroit. Watson back, Aaron Jones back. That kind of takes a lot of targets away from a lot of everybody else in this offense, right? Those two guys are really going to expect the targets, and they're going to earn all the target shares. So I just think the opportunities are not going to be there for Musgrave this week, and he's been solid, but not this week against Detroit.
No, I totally agree with that play for sure.
All right, let's go to our high risk, high reward play of the week. If you're in here with us still, thank you so much. Make sure you hit that like button. Let us know if there's a player you think is high risk, high reward this week, and I'll let you get started here with yours.
Yeah, I know I already talked about the Bears and Broncos game, how staying away from it, but there is one player that I think has the biggest high reward, high risk kind of floor, and it's Justin Fields going into that game against the Denver Broncos. If he ends up, they have an epiphany and they decide to run the offense the way they did last year, I think there's a lot of potential for him to run all over this Broncos defense, maybe pop off in the passing game too. You spent a lot of draft capital on Justin Fields if you drafted him this year, most likely. Like, he was one of the top 10 QBs off the board going in the middle rounds. You really don't want to give up on him just quite yet. if you're looking for a guy that could pop off this week, definitely like his potential in the high reward sector, but the high risk side of things as well is something to be mindful of because he's been getting bopped around a little bit. He's
Yeah.
been the highest sack quarterback since he entered the league. There's a lot of fumbles coming out of his hands. There's a lot of turnovers. He's really not getting the passing game going a ton. So it's going to take, really him popping off in the rushing game against this Broncos team for him to be in that high reward factor. Otherwise, a lot of risk, a lot of red flags here, but that ceiling could be enough for you to plug him in.
Yeah, he starts running the ball. They start calling more design run plays. We just saw what Miami did run the ball against this Denver defense. So
right. And they've been getting
we'll
criticized a ton, the Bears have, for not letting him play his game. So who knows? Maybe it takes 3 straight losses for them to kick that up.
He himself has criticized the coaching for not letting him run.
That too.
I just mentioned the Miami defense. That's where I'm going high risk, high reward is against this defense, and it's Gabe Davis of the Buffalo Bills. Miami runs that zone concept with Fangio's defense. The same reason I targeted Gabe Davis 2 weeks ago. He is a zone killer. He's not really good at all, actually, against man-to-man. His splits are quite it's very drastic, right? When he plays zone defense versus a man-to-man defense.
Yeah.
This week he's playing a zone defense. I think that gives him opportunity. Plus, it's the highest total on the week, which should give him more volume, more passing plays, all of that good stuff. Gabe Davis can always give you a goose egg, but hopefully this week against another zone defense, he becomes a high reward type of play for you.
I like that one. I think with Gabe Davis too, being in that shootout potential game with Miami, like there's a really good chance he catches a couple bombs here and there, so all it takes is one 50-yard touchdown for that to be worth it. All right, QB and defensive streams of the week. Trevor, you want to kick us off first? Because I think you and I are kind of on the same page here.
Yeah, Lee and I are also on the same page. Gabe Davis, high reward of the week. Yeah, quarterback-wise, you put him in your starts of the week. I put him in my stream of the week because he's only rostered in 20 to 30% of leagues. Jordan Love, I agree with you 100%. He's rarely rostered. So if you need a guy, if you're not trusting Justin Fields this week, right, if you don't want to play Russ, if that's who your quarterback is, maybe you don't feel great about Daniel Jones. I say start Daniel Jones, but he's been bad twice. Maybe you don't feel great about him. So you want to play somebody else. Like just Jordan Love is going to be out there and available in your league most likely. Go ahead and throw him in there and see how this game goes tomorrow night. And then on the defensive side of things, I'm going with the Bengals against this Tennessee Titans offense. There's only one offense that's worse than the Tennessee Titans. I put on my notes the Tennessee nursing home of Titans because they're just a bunch of old dudes that aren't doing anything at all right now. But that team that's worse is led by Zach Wilson, right? So that's when you know you're bad. If the only team that's worse than you is led by Zach Wilson. The Bengals sacked the Rams 6 times last week. They took advantage of that weak offensive line. The Tennessee Titans have a really, really bad offensive line. I look for them to do the same this week. Hendricks and company just kind of teeing off on Ryan Tannehill. So give me some Bengals defense this week. No,
that's a good play right there. For QB, I'm going with Brock Purdy up against the Arizona Cardinals. Definitely somebody who I think could pop off against that team. Obviously, with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk being question marks, that could give you a little bit of a pause, but I think signs pointing towards Deebo playing this week from what I was able to come across. And, Brock Purdy is just one of those poised guys. He's a good game manager. He's not going to turn the ball over a ton, if ever. And, he'll find George Kittle. He's going to find Christian McCaffrey and the rest of that receiving core that's left. So I like Brock Purdy this week against the Cardinals. And then on the defensive side, Sorry for throwing your boy Daniel Jones under the bus here, but he is also a turnover machine. Big
He
time
is.
interceptions, big time on fumbles, even though he does have that rushing upside. About threw my whole desk over here. But the Seattle Seahawks defense not been great for sure. I could agree with you there. But if I'm looking at streaming options, most of the prime defenses are going to be in people's starting lineups. We don't have a lot of buys this week, and there's not a lot of other matchups that are really screaming at me other than this Bengals one you brought up. I mean, like, all of the really, really bad teams are either facing another really, really bad defense or they're facing one of those prime defenses that people are already rostering. So
Yep.
I'm with Seattle here. I think they have the best potential to generate a couple turnovers off of the Giants and maybe keep them under 20 points. But at the very least, you're going to pick up a sack or two. You have a really good shot at a pick or a fumble recovery. So I'm going there.
Skull everyone. 0-3 Vikings versus the 0-3 Panthers this week. Game of the week.
Speaking of defenses I don't like.
Yes, that's right. And you think like the Vikings are turning the ball over at such a high clip. You're like, oh, maybe. But then you see it's the Panthers. You're like, nah, no thanks, actually.
Yeah, I'm out on that. The rest of the
that.
matchups just didn't really do it for me for the defenses.
Yeah. You mentioned Brock Purdy. I would say, shame. Get my plug in. I might be talking about Brock Purdy Friday night on the Rumbles of Red a little bit for DFS this week. Really good spot. I kind of like a little. I've been looking at it. I like to do a little bit of like a Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey with the 49ers defense. It's definitely super different and not a stack that I would usually run. I usually run wide receivers, but you mentioned the injuries to Debo and Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey catches enough screen passes that it could help Brock Purdy. So yeah, Brock Purdy in season long for sure. I like that play a lot, and I might be talking about him a little bit more on the Rumbles of Red, 8:15 on Friday nights.
Yeah, baby, tune in.
Lee says Purdy very easily could have had 2 interceptions last week. He was saved by Kittle and Debo on 2 throws. I was also saved by Debo because he won me some good cash.
We're all getting saved by Debo.
That's right. Sure did. Paid for the whole weekend of DFS plays. So
I love breaking even, baby.
Thanks. Exactly. Thank you, Debo Samuel.
Breaking even's almost, I would consider that a win.
Hey, I'm down for it. If I break even, I had a great time playing all weekend long.
Yeah,
and I can
you beat the odds breaking even.
I can do it again next week. So, well, let's get out of here this week. How's that sound?
Yeah, man, I'm ready for it. Of course, most exciting part about this upcoming week, we get to see Taylor Swift at another game in New York. So
is she going to be there Sunday night? I feel like she's got to be there Sunday night in New York.
Reports indicating she will be there. She lives in New York, so
it might be the highest rated NFL game of all time, and that's because of the amount of people who want to see Taylor Swift. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, but think of the amount of wives and girls in households that are like, what? I want to watch now. And so they're just literally just turning TVs on. I don't know. We'll see.
If I'm the NFL, I'm loving this right now. Loving it.
They're going to eat it up all they can. And, they'll make all the puns and all the comments about it. But it's a fun love story, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, appreciate everyone joining us on the show tonight. Of course, this is brought to you by Bite Size Sports at @bite_size sports on X. Still getting used to that. Feel free to follow me on X as well at Dan_TF40. Same tag for Instagram. Some news this week. We are getting back into the Fastest 40. A little shameless plug here.
There we go. Let's
entered into a partnership with Odyssey Sports. If you're here in Kansas City, 610 Sports Radio. That is the parent company for 610. So we are going to be their official Chiefs podcast for Odyssey Sports moving forward. First episode coming out on Red Friday. We'll be recording that tomorrow night and dropping it. So make sure you follow along with that show on the free Odyssey Sports app. Of course, catch us anywhere podcasts are listened to as well.
Yeah, I'm so pumped for you all, guys. Man, that's going to be freaking awesome. Make sure you guys, if you're in here, you're listening to us, you got to make sure you go follow the Fastest 40 and listen to Dan and Trey, right? Is his name?
Yep.
And it's going to be awesome. So great job. Congratulations on all the good stuff that you guys got going on over there at the Fastest 40. Follow me on Twitter at @TrevorS_FF. I'll be back Friday night, 8:15 Central Time, right here on the Bite Size Sports Network. Dan, you got me this week, but I'm still 2-1 in the league. We're gonna get out of here, but I still got you in the league.
Meet me in the playoffs.
That's right. We'll see you then.
Later, brother.
I know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting